Welcome to the Selling in the Motor Trade podcast, in association with Simco Training. This is the weekly podcast where we share best practice, tips and ideas on how to sell more cars, improve your service department, and generally put more profit into your dealership or dealer group. I'm your host, Simon Bowkett. Now, some of you probably already know me as Skippy. I would start by saying thank you for taking the time to listen to this podcast. Today, I'm very, very privileged to be speaking to Peter Smyth, the board director of the Swansway Group. Lots of sales managers, service managers will be listening to this. That's a lot of our market. That's what they tune into what we talk about. So I want to ask you, if you've got a sales manager listening to this and they need to make an impact really quickly in their business, in their departments, what advice would you have for that person to make that impact very quickly in their business?
Get every salesman to tidy the drawers in his desk out.
I love the simple retail's in the detail again. Maybe not what that person was thinking.
Get him to walk around the pitch and move any weeds or leaves or bits of litter.
Yeah.
And then you can talk about the online offering, etc., etc. Make sure that every sales lead is on Inquiry Max. 2 or 3 different things. I'd start off with cleaning out the drawers, though.
Yeah, I just keep coming back to retail is in the detail.
Absolutely.
I've seen you when you walk into a business, and I've seen you walking around the used cars first. You'll walk in. I've seen your father go to the toilets and check the toilets. It's all the small things that happen all the time. Well, listen, this podcast all about sharing tips, best practice and ideas in the motor trade. Are there any, if there's just one tip you could leave the listeners of this podcast with, okay? We talked about cleaning the drawers and making sure the pitch is right. Is there one tip that you would like to leave all the listeners of this podcast with?
Look at your online offering.
Perfect. Hey, listen, today I'm joined by Robin Luscombe. Hey, listen, what's your one tip or bit of advice you'd like to leave the listeners or the viewers to this? Is there anything specific you'd like to leave them with?
I would say that when you sat in a showroom, and I've done it, my business plan to start with was by the end of the 12 months, I had to be selling 12 cars a week. Mm-hmm. That was it. And when you sat in the showroom and there's nobody coming in and the phone's not ringing and you've worked all the leads that you've worked them all to death, and you sat there twiddling your thumbs and what can I do now? And I hear all sorts of things on different podcasts in America about what they do, how they sell a car. Well, I have a bit of a different take because I believe that you can't do an awful lot today to sell a car today, but you can do something today to sell a car tomorrow.
Okay.
So if you sat there and you don't know what to do, and there's no phone calls and there's nobody coming in on the pitch and what have you, work out what you can do today that might sell you a car tomorrow. And by saying that, it's just a matter of raffle tickets. The more raffle tickets we buy, the more chance you have of winning the raffle. So even if it's just rephotographing used cars, doing a better description for a used car, checking that they all start. Because if you don't check that they all start today, or you don't check something today, and somebody comes to look at that car tomorrow and it doesn't start, or they read a description of a used car and it's got a spelling mistake in that you could have corrected today and you didn't, they might not buy it tomorrow. So do something today that might sell you a car tomorrow.
I love that. Nice and simple. So true. So true. Today, I'm really excited to be joined by William Brown, the Managing Director of Isuzu. William, lots of people listening to this podcast will be salespeople, sales managers, people are starting off in the industry. And something I'd like to ask is, what advice would you give to that young William Brown starting those years ago? What advice would you like to give them so they could achieve what you've achieved in the motor trade?
I think when I started out, and it's different because people have different personalities, but being true to yourself. So not trying to pretend something that you're not, you see many great leaders and businesses, and you look at them and think, I need to be like that. But if you find your own way of making it work for yourself, as long as you're hardworking and authentic, I think authenticity is a great trait, because people need to trust you. So yeah, but a lot of my success, I'd say, in the early days, particularly, a lot of hard work and hours, but it pays off. It depends how much hard you want it, really. I think I remember when I was a salesman back in that Toyota dealership, my service manager came through to me and he said to me, he had a go at me for something, and he said, "You'll never make it. You'll never get past a salesman. You'll just end up being a salesman for the rest of your life." And look, I'm not that a salesman anymore. So if you want it hard enough, if you want it strong enough, and work hard, then I think anything's possible in automotive, and it's a very exciting business to be in.
I bet you remember that conversation every day now. And was that part of the motivation, do you think, at some time?
I think so. I think it helps, doesn't it? If people say you can't do it, you want to prove them wrong.
Isn't that so true? Today, I'm very, very honoured to be with James Voortman. Now, James is the CEO of the Australian Automotive Dealers Association. Can I ask you, in your first 3 months, is there anything that you learned that is relevant today as it was relevant when you first started?
Yeah, look, I think the most important thing in your first sort of 90 days in any new industry is listening and learning from those people that you know have been successful in the industry. I probably was very fortunate to have worked with a couple of industry legends when I got to the AADA. One of them was a guy called David Blackhall, who in Australia had worked for decades for various OEMs, including Ford. He worked as a dealer, and he also worked for, he actually led the Asia Pacific Jaguar Land Rover operation. And
wow, to have both sides of it, that's rare, isn't it? Yeah,
he did. And he had the experience on both sides, but he also had amazing communication skills. I just sort of tried to absorb as much as I possibly could from him. I learned about both sides of the relationship, and you know, I probably learned more from him than I've learned from anyone in the industry, and I've used that and grown that knowledge base. But the foundation was identifying the right person. I also had a fantastic chair at the time, sort of a generational dealer called Terry Keating, and he was also very generous with his time with me. So I think where you can latch on to the people that will afford you that opportunity to learn, and just make yourself available to them.
Well, in your time as the CEO of the Australian Automotive Dealers Association, you must have seen some really, really good dealerships. You must go in some places and see some people that really punch above their weight. Can I ask you, what separates the good from the great, or the great from the good, I should say? Is there anything that stands out that you see a trend all the time, the great dealers are doing things?
Yeah, you know, I think it's putting the customer first. You know, we're seeing that at the moment in a supply-constrained environment. It's actually a really good time to be a dealer, and you can get away with poor customer service because, you know, in a situation where demand exceeds supply, you're not fighting for the customers in the way you used to. But it's those dealers, I think, that put their customers first, and create an environment in which they encourage their staff to always be customer focused, to always value the longer term, you know, relationship rather than the quick sale. You know, goes the extra miles with things like providing service loan vehicles, you know, getting explanations to customers about how technology works, taking, you know, going to those extra bits of trouble just to ensure that the customer is first, and is going to come back to you when they have an opportunity, whether it's for service, whether it's to buy a new car, whether it's to refinance. You know, making that impression on the customer at every opportunity you can, and leaving the customer with a positive experience. I think the dealers that strive for that, I think, are the ones that are going to be successful.
It's my great pleasure today to be interviewing Mr. Tommy Gibbs. Now, listen, let's get into used cars now, if I may, because that is your expertise, and I love your philosophy on it. But I'd just like to get your views on how do we stop the race to the bottom? Okay, should a sales manager consistently be chasing to be the cheapest car on the internet? What are your views on being the cheapest on the internet? Is there that race to the bottom? Do we help? What do we do to try and stop that, or can we stop it?
I think we can improve what we're doing. You don't have to race to the bottom on every car. That's the key on every car. You have to be able to recognize those cars that are profit makers. Lots of companies, even like mine, we have software that will identify cars that have a low market day supply and that sort of thing. Those are the cars that you should be making good money on. And what happened in the industry, I don't know, over the last 15 years or so, we got into this mindset of every car has to be priced really, really low to get action on it. And there are some that you need to price super low to make them go away because they're problematic. They may not be the best piece for your, be the best vehicle for your operation, your lot. But what happens is we keep those cars too long. So if you want to avoid the race to the bottom, make sure you identify your problematic cars on day one, price them right, and get them out of here. And when you move those problem cars out faster, then your gross profit on each car is going to improve because you don't have those cars hanging around later that you just get desperate on and have to give away. So I think it's important to do a couple of things. One, identify your cars that you have the potential to make good money on and be willing to ask all the money for the right car, and make sure those cars that are somewhat problematic, maybe they have high kilometers on them, maybe they're bad color, maybe the equipment mix isn't good, maybe you buried yourself in that car, you put too much money in a car to make a new car go away.
Yep.
Those are problematic. So, but the problem is dealers hang on to those cars, they hang on and hang on. Pretty soon they're 60 days and above, and now they have to give them away, totally give them away, and the average profit goes way down.
It's so true. That overage stock is overage on day one, isn't it? And we know that that's going to be hard work in that color to sell. We know we've had to bring it in too heavy, we would say in the UK, too much money. Too heavy. But we think, hey, we'll retail out of it. It'll be fine. There'll be a bump for it, but it just doesn't happen, does it?
But here's the problem. You and I've chatted about this offline before, but and I say this all the time. The problem is that they will have a car like that, and it's a crappy color, high miles or whatever, and they keep it past 60 days, 70 days or whatever, and they actually sell it and they make money on it. And I had a dealer tell me one day in a 20 group meeting, we have a lot of those in this country, in a 20 group meeting, dealer says, Tommy, the problem in the car business is every now and then a miracle happens. And so in our heads, we're going, yeah, I know. And then all of a sudden they get lucky, but they think they're going to get lucky on everything. You're not going to get lucky on everything. Just because that happened one time, it's a really bad bet to think about the fact that I'm going to make money on cars past 60, because the reality is you aren't. I mean, even if you were to make a little bit of profit on that car, if you calculate the return on the investment, it really sucks. So why would you keep a car past 60 days old? Now, when I make that statement about why would you keep a car past 60 days old, the first thing in this country that happens in people's heads when they hear that, they go, what he's telling me is that if I have a car that's 60 days old, I need to send it to the auctions, wholesale it, get rid of the car, and take a loss on it. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is if you would have priced that car correctly a long time ago, you would have already sold it and you wouldn't be dealing with it at 60. There's someone that will buy that car if you get it to the right price. If you sell a car, let's say you keep a car 90 days and you sell it for X and you make $200. You get lucky and you make 200. And you've had it for 90 days. My question is, well, if you could have sold it, if you sold it at 90 days and made 200, could you have sold it at 45 days for that same price and made 200? Yep. We don't know the answer, but the odds are you probably could, but you just didn't price it right soon enough. So you keep hanging on and hanging on and hanging on and hoping the miracle is going to happen, and it's not going to happen.
That just leaves me to say that all details of this episode and other episodes on the selling in the motor trade can be found on our website, simcotraining.co.uk. Go there to get a copy of our book, Words That Sell Cars. Go there to sign up to a free trial of our Sales Fitness online sales training program. Easiest way to get hold of me is Simon Bowkett through LinkedIn. Thank you.